Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If it looks like I have no idea how to dress myself these days, it's because I truly don't. We are about to start the playoffs for Major League Baseball. The Orioles are in it for the first time in forever, it feels like. But we are also right in the midst of the college football season, which is what we're here to talk about today. We're going to look at the logos for another one of my all-time favorite conferences, the Coastal Athletic Association, not Colonial Athletic Association. Kindly ignore that graphic in the background every time that it's put up. There's a ton of logos in this league, many of which are fantastic. Others leave a little bit to be desired. So as always, we're going to jump right in with what I consider to be the worst logo in this league, working our way up to the first. We're going to kick it off at number 16. This kind of breaks my heart a little bit. I'm going to give those honors or dishonors to the University of Rhode Island. Rhodey, number 16. Love you, buddy, but this leaves a little bit to be desired here. There's really not a whole lot to talk about with this logo. We've got a silhouette of an RI, obviously for Rhode Island, with two different colors. It's just basically two different shades of blue. And this logo has pretty much just stayed the same for the entirety of the Rhode Island Athletics. There's been a few different variations. I found a couple that are decent, you know, as far as like looking at alternative logos or ones that might have been used in the past. But by and large, this RI is just kind of what we've been looking at for years and years and years. And there's just nothing particularly exciting about it whatsoever. And that's really all I could say about this logo. I mean, you look at it and you're like, yeah, sure enough, that is a silhouette of an R and an I with two different shades of blue. And that's really where the story ends with this logo. It's just not very interesting and it's not very exciting. I am still obviously a big fan of this team. Love Rhode Island. This just leaves so much to be desired. And the same can be true for our next one. Yikes. We're going to go with Villanova. Now I'm going to say, fortunately for this channel, we are talking about the Colonial Athletic Association, which is a football-specific conference. We are not talking about Big East basketball because I would be absolutely crucified for ranking Villanova this low. The exact same thing that I just said about Rhode Island can also be said about Villanova here. Like, it's just two different shades of blue. We just have a single lettering in this case instead of an RI. It's just a V for Villanova. It looks fine. I think that this logo carries a lot of prestige and a lot of recognition. Just people are familiar with this and they've seen it, and that's kind of good enough. Like, this logo kind of skates by on its prestige and the fact that it's just well known. But if we look at some of their older or alternative logos that they've used throughout their program, franchise history, whatever, the Wildcat is such a generic mascot, but they have done such a good job at incorporating their Wildcat character with the V for Villanova, and it's just looked fantastic. So I would love to see more of this instead of just this V, whatever. Moving on. At number 14, we've got the Bryant Bulldogs, who actually aren't going to show up in the CAA until 2024, but I decided to include them this year. I'm not really sure what's going on with that expression, and this logo, if we look at it as a whole picture, it's kind of busy, right? Like, it's got the mascot up top, and it's got the university and the mascot name, in this case the Bulldogs, which kind of, like, there's a lot sort of to look at. I'm not mad about it. I'm not particularly stoked about it. He does have just kind of like a whatever expression, and he's just a little too poopy brown again. It's just that coloring for me is throwing me off a bit. I did come across this older logo here that I really like. Just, this has a very classic collegiate look to it, with the bulldog popping out of the middle, because, like, obviously we know that the mascot is the bulldog. He's a bulldog, right? I'm about this. This what we see over here. It's a little too busy, and he's just a little too muddy, aka poopy looking for me. Doesn't offend me greatly, but I think this could be done a little better. Next up, we've got Elon University, which is a logo that I think I've come to kind of familiarize myself a little bit just with watching college basketball specifically. I see this logo quite a bit because they have a really strong basketball program. I've always felt this is a really strong logo, but it hasn't really stood out to me in the way that I kind of wish it would, because their athletic name, this is the Phoenix, the Elon Phoenix. And you can't super tell that maybe that's a Phoenix in the background unless you knew that that was the team name, but it is a Phoenix. So fun fact, and you know, maybe this isn't like a super fun fact, but it's worth noting that Elon University almost burned to the ground like 100 years ago. And at the time they were known as the Fighting Christians, but to create something that was a little bit more modernized and unified with where the university stands today, they decided to change it to the Phoenix, which represents, you know, the rebuild after that fire from 100 years ago. So I really, really appreciate the name and the history and the story of the Elon Phoenix. I think that's super cool. This logo, however, again, I just think it could just be done a little better. I do appreciate this modern version is a little bit tweaked from something that we saw not even that long ago, where we had the Phoenix up top and then it said Elon down at the bottom. I appreciate that Elon is now over the Phoenix. And I do appreciate too that the Phoenix itself is kind of shaped like an E for Elon. I think I like just the story and the history of this logo more than I do the actual product, because again, it just suffers like what I just talked about Bryant. It just kind of has these darker, muted, kind of muddy colors, and I wish it was just a little bit more red and vibrant. So that previous logo that we saw, I actually like these colors a lot better than the current Elon that we see. Overall, not bad, just not my favorite. Next up, we've got the Hampton Pirates. Now, the first thing I think of when I think of the Hampton Pirates is actually this logo over here, which has this really busy boy with this like massive hat that I always thought looked like a bat with his wings spread out. This current version that just kind of stripped away the pirate in the background and just has the cross swords across the name of the university for Hampton is a lot cleaner. It looks a lot nicer, still keeps that same silhouetted blue and white color. But I always thought this logo could just use a little bit of something extra, a little something spicy. If we look at a couple of logos throughout their history, I think the pirate had a lot more personality to it. But they've since stripped that away in the name of simplicity, which I respect because, again, that pirate boy that we just saw a minute ago had just too many details going on. He was really hard to look at as a whole. This simplified version that they're running with now that's a little bit more modernized and clean, it's really nice. But it's just, you know, I think we've got more interesting logos ahead. For example, the North Carolina A&T Aggies. I have always really liked this logo, even though it's very simple, and we see a lot of logos in college athletics that just have, you know, the letters representing the school. I think this is done so well because there's this really cool layering effect. There's that motion of that T that's going up through that A, which is very unique and has this really cool look to it. And I really appreciate some of their alternative logos or some of their old logos that they've used in the past. Like the Superman Bulldog is probably my favorite one of the bunch. Yeah, the Aggies. This is a sick logo. I'm really into this. Next up, I've got the Monmouth Hawks. Now, this logo is something that I wanted to rank so much higher, but when I was like putting these together, I think I kind of Mandela affected myself into remembering that this logo, the hawk himself, had like a smirk, like a cheeky kind of sarcastic smirk to it. But when I was ranking these and putting these together, I realized that he's not really smirking. He looks kind of like checked out and bored. I think of that kid in the SpongeBob shirt specifically who just looks completely bored, which sucks because everything about this hawk is interesting. Like it's drawn well. It's interesting. It looks great objectively. I love the colors. His feathers look awesome. Everything about it is so cool, but his expression is so bored. And why would you get stoked about a team when their expression is just like, dude, what's for lunch? So let's flip a 180 here and look at a logo that actually does have some personality and characteristic to it. That's the University of Maine Black Bears. Now we're just in time for October here because this is my favorite author of all time, University of Maine graduate Stephen King, very spooky boy. And we're looking at a very intense and fearful logo, as in like, you know, you see this and you're like, oh shit. We're playing Maine. That bear looks scary. I'm into it. Honestly, like Maine Athletics has kept this logo just like this for a very long time. It's a successful recipe. It works. It really does. But I do think that there are stronger logos coming up. So that's why this one is kind of more in the middle here. I think that blue Maine in the background could just be a little bit more interesting. I want the focus to be more on the bear itself because the bear is awesome. I also appreciate this old logo. Kind of looks like the bear is sitting on the turlet. It's just funny to me. I'm into it. Next up, we went with William and Mary, the tribe. This logo is very recent. They kind of rebranded from something that really wasn't, I don't want to say it was bad, but it just kind of was whatever. It just looked like this. It just said tribe, but they've decided to add this griffin to their primary logo here, and it looks sick. I do think that William and Mary tends to lean more towards their word marks in general, or just their lettering. So we see the logo without the griffin in the background quite a bit. We just see just the W and M for William and Mary. I also really like this sick looking logo here, which is very stately. I feel like this could work for like a real estate company. Yeah, William and Mary, go tribe. At number 7, we've got the Towson Tigers. So yeah, I mean, Baltimore, represent. Let's go. I say this because Towson is right outside Baltimore. Now, this school absolutely has some of my favorite vintage logos of all the vintage logos that we're going to share in this video today. I mean, historically, this logo has just always included a very aggressive and detail-oriented tiger, which, you know, for a very generic name like the Tiger, you could run into issues of just being a little bit too generic. But I think that this tiger has always stood out, including the modern version where he's just charging to his left with Towson in a fantastic font, by the way. And I really love how the T and the end on either end come down almost like his like fangs or teeth. Towson. Hell yeah, this is awesome. At number 6, we're going with the Albany Great Danes. Now, there might be a number of you out there looking at this logo for the first time. You might recognize some of these logos over here. These actually are what go through my mind first when I think of the Albany Great Danes, because I spent a lot of time looking at these logos, and I'm still adjusting to this new logo package that they have, which you can see here. And this is an exceptionally strong rebrand for Albany, who I always thought had very strong logos to begin with, but they've really, really leaned into the Great Dane itself. Don't know if this was intentional, but I mean, we are talking about a football conference here, and his ears kind of remind me of a goalpost. I love what they've done here. This is sick. Love what they've done with the place. Kicking things off at number 5, this is actually the team that kind of inspired me to make this video in the first place, because I was very, very recently just in Richmond, Virginia, but this is the Richmond Spiders. Spiders is a sick name for a university or like an athletic team in general. And what they've done with their branding here is insanely strong, and it always has been. But the primary logo here of just the spider as a silhouette, it seems simple, and it is, but I think that's what's so great about it, because there's so many things that you can do, not just with having this as your primary logo as a silhouette, but just with the name Spiders in general. Like, we've seen some webbing used in some of their alternative branding, and I mean, that just looks so strong. And everything that they've done throughout their history has just landed, and it always will. Richmond Spiders, man, fantastic. At number 4, we've got probably, well, at the time I'm filming this, the weakest team in this conference right now. It's the Stony Brook Seawolves. Yeah, their logo is fantastic. So they're winning at something, at least. But I mean, talk about a logo here that has energy and aggression and attitude. This is a very scary looking wolf. And I would not want to be up against this guy. Colors here are great too. I love the red outline and his red eye to kind of pull everything in together. This was a team that was actually kind of hard to find old logos for, because they were the Patriots for a very long time. They're now the Seawolves, and they first started out when they rebranded with this guy here. It's strong. I like it. It's good. It's just way too busy. And they decided to get rid of the word Seawolves and kind of clean things up and focus just more on the sea wolf itself, like the actual creature. And I'm so glad they did. That was such a smart decision, because again, yeah, this guy's ferocious. And so is our number 3 pick with the New Hampshire Wildcats. So with a generic name like Wildcat, it'd be easy to do something generic, but this Wildcat has a lot of intensity and aggressiveness, and I love that he's perched above the school name with just their letters, UNH, and they've also got some pretty interesting throwback logos as well. But what I really appreciate is all the amount that you can do with this Wildcat, because I've seen different variations of this where we have just the Wildcat itself. I've also seen UNH and then stacked with Wildcats below it, which I appreciate that it's an option, but I'm kind of glad to just see that their primary logo is just the UNH without the Wildcats, because again, like we mentioned with the Bryant Bulldogs, it just gets a little too cluttered having the school and the mascot name kind of all stacked together. So they do have that option. I'm glad that they don't use it all the time. I think that this is fantastic. Very deserving of a top 3, but it didn't quite make 1 or 2. Number 2, we're going to have to go with the Campbell Fighting Camels. You heard that right. This is the Campbell Fighting Camels. And this also had a very recent rebrand as well, but it's since been cleaned up. So we just see this racing camel who's got a jersey on with a C for Campbell, or camel, I guess. Could be another way to look at it. It probably stands for Campbell though. And so he still has all that energy that he kept throughout some of these older logos, where he's racing forward and marching on. Not all logos have to have this like aggressive intensity to it, like we've seen with Stony Brook, New Hampshire, Towson, etc., etc. Like, this has that aggressiveness, but it's toned down quite a bit, because like it has a ridiculous name, the Fighting Camels. But sometimes that works. That cartoony goofiness can really, really work if it's treated with respect and done well, which this absolutely is. I think this program understands that they have a silly name, and they leaned into that silliness, but also gave it the attention to detail that it deserves. And this is really working for me. Black and orange, gotta love the color combination as well. This is an A+. A++. And so now we are left with one final logo in the Coastal Athletic Association. If you've been enjoying this so far, consider liking, consider subscribing, and let me know how we doing so far. You been enjoying this? I hope so. At number 1, it's the Delaware Fightin' Blue Hens. Joe Flacco is elite. Just gonna get it out there and finalize it. The greatest Delaware Fightin' Blue Hen in history. Elite Baltimore Raven quarterback. There you go. I also kind of have to just say ditto to everything we literally just talked about with Campbell, with this university, this program, knowing that they have a silly name. I mean, they're the Fightin' Blue Hens, but they have given it the just attention to detail and respect. It is intense. It has character. It has personality. It has amazing color. There's nothing that you can't love about this logo. Everything that this program touches is absolute gold when it comes to marketing and making their logo. Without a doubt, one of the best logos that we've ever explored on this channel, and one of my favorite sport logos in history. Everything about this works for me. It is absolutely iconic. Joe Flacco is elite. Guys, thank you so much for clicking. Thank you so much for watching. Really hope you enjoyed this. Go O's, or whoever your Major League Baseball team might be. There's a lot of teams that I'm rooting for in this postseason. Marty's coming in here to say hello and to say go O's as well. Let me know what leagues or conferences you'd like to see discussed in future videos. I do have a plan of going through most FCS conferences, primarily because I went to the University of Montana and I love FCS football, but I love FBS football too, and we will get to that, I promise you. As always, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for clicking. Thanks for hanging out. Drop a like, drop a subscribe. We will see you in the next video.